the worship part of our worship service. Today is what is known as Gold Star Sunday. This is a Sunday where we can pause for just a moment and remember those families who have lost loved ones in the line of duty. We are absolutely blessed to have a Gold Star daughter here in our congregation with us on most Sundays. And she has agreed, most humbly, to come and give a little presentation this morning for us. So if you guys would please welcome Miss Natalie Rao.
Thank you for that great introduction. And I know I've got Chaplain Breckenridge over there guiding me because he's the one preaching today. But I'm so honored to be here. In 1936, the designation was made for Gold Star Mother's Day, the last Sunday of September. And that's after World War I. We lost over 100,000 of our young men in World War I. And many of you know it was actually called the Great War. And you know what? That name signifies they thought that would be the war to end all wars. And now, of course, we know it as World War I. Because then we have World War II, we have Korea, we have Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and many other conflicts that may seem small, except if you were the one involved. And so I think it was around 2012 or 13 that President Obama renamed it Gold Star Mothers and Families Day. So it includes all the immediate relatives of those who were lost. So my story, and I did bring a lot of photos. I'm not going to show you them all right now, but if anybody wants to look at this book after the service, you can. My story is that my dad was Air Force. He always wanted to be a pilot. That was his life dream. And so in 1954, he actually dropped out of college with his best friend, signed up for the Air Force, and they did their pilot training, I think in 4 different locations. Mm-hmm. One of those locations was Spence Airfield in Moultrie, Georgia. Spence Airfield was long ago closed down, and apologies for anybody in southern Georgia, but it was in the middle of nowhere. So 2 young hotshot pilots-to-be would drive down to Tallahassee every weekend, where Florida State would give them better options, maybe somebody to go out with. And so that's how my mom was a Florida State student. That's how my parents met. And we've got letters. Once he moved on to Texas for further training, we've got the letters he would write my mom. And I think they had already discussed marriage because we've got a letter from August of 1955, I think. And it says, do you know that a pilot's life is very dangerous and it's a lot to think about? A pilot's wife has to be strong and courageous. So think about it and let me know. And so I'm standing here as proof that she said yes. And so my dad he finished his flight training. He had 4 years in Michigan at Selfridge Air Force Base, 4 years in England at Alconbury RAF, and then he got stationed to Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. And that was June of 65, so you can tell where this story is going. And June of 64, and then in October of 65, he left for Vietnam. That was in the very early stages of the war, and so if his government needed him somewhere, then he was going to do what they asked him to do. And there were 4 kids by now. We were 8, 6, 5, and 2 when my dad left for Vietnam. He was an F-4 pilot, so many of you know that was a 2-seater. So his co-pilot was Jim Tucker, and Jim left a wife and 2 little kids. And they served for 6 months in Vietnam. They were reconnaissance pilots, and there was a certain point on their mission where they went off the radar and then came back on, because they're flying as low as they can to the ground. And there's just that one night where they didn't come back on radar. So we don't know if, we're assuming it was a surface-to-air missile that got them. We actually don't know. We don't know if the plane went down over water or over land. So if you hear that there are 1,566 missing in action from Vietnam who are still unaccounted for, then that includes my dad. And for those of you who are visiting, I hope you have a chance to go to Punch Bowl Cemetery while you're here in the Court of the Missing. The courts of the missing are in the back of Punch Bowl, and my dad's name is one of the names etched on the Court of the Missing. And there's actually a ceremony there today at 1 p.m. if anybody's interested in going. It's for Gold Star Sunday, and it's sponsored by Hawaii Garrison. So we got some huge, this is an Army chapel, so we got huge Army ties here. Even though my dad was Air Force, I also had a husband who was 29 years as an Army chaplain. So I've got, I don't know who I cheer. I don't really follow college ball, but I don't know who I would cheer for in those circumstances. But my mom never remarried. And, I've already lost my mom over 20 years ago. I still have all my siblings. They all live in Southeast United States. And I get along fantastically with all of them. But then I kind of joke, I wonder if living 6,000 miles away helps. Anyway, I feel like it was important for me to be in Hawaii to represent my husband and represent my dad. And one of my favorite things to do is to show people around the Court of the Missing. And so I want to close with a story, something that I will show you one. So those in the back might not be able to see, but this is my dad, and then our family in 1964. So those were happy times. We had just come back from England, and my baby brother was born in England. So he, everybody wanted to meet baby Greg, and I'm sure they wanted to see how grown the rest of us had become. The other fascinating thing is when I moved to Hawaii, my dad's co-pilot's wife lived here. Many of you have met her, Glenda, because she visited here at Fort Teresa Chapel quite often. She lived in Hawaii for, I think, over 40 years, and then a couple of years ago decided to move to California to be near her sister. So we miss her seriously. She's 83. She's an amazing woman and shows great strength. She never remarried either. And if my mom and dad were still alive, they would be 92. So in 2002, we were stationed at Fort Benning. And that was back when, you read the print newspaper, which I always loved to do. So we got the Columbus Ledger Inquirer, I think was the name. Saturday morning, we opened it up, and there's an ad for Barnes & Noble that Hal Moore was going to do a book signing. And if the name Hal Moore is familiar, it's because he was, at the time, a lieutenant colonel, the battalion lead during IDRANG, which was end of October, beginning of November 1965. And so he has since passed, but at the time he lived in Auburn, Georgia, and he was going to do a book signing. So my husband was looking over my shoulder, and he saw the ad, and he just said, "Get in the car and go." Like he knew this was something really, really, that would be very important to me. And I did that, so I'm in a very long line. There's a lady who's making sure the line goes smoothly. So she walks down the line, she hands everybody an index card, and she says, "Write down how you want the book inscribed." So that way it saves a lot of time when you actually get up to meet Hal Moore. So I thought I had plenty of time to think about it, because then I was like, ooh, I'll give this to my husband, because, that would change how it was dedicated. And then I was like, I was feeling a little selfish that day. And I thought, I could give it to one of my brothers. And I was like, I think I'm just going to say to Natalie. And then I wrote down, whose father paid the ultimate price. And I get up there to the front. Hal Moore was a man of very few words. He said 3 words to me, "Is this you?" And I said yes. And he was a lefty, so he kind of, you've seen lefties kind of guard what they're about to write. So he was guarding what he was saying. And then he closed the book, handed it to me, off to the next person. So I go to the back of the Barnes & Noble, and I open up the book. I've got it right here, and I promise I am leaving with this, but this is very valuable because I also have Joe Galloway's signature and the Command Sergeant Major. So this is one of my most prized possessions. But I opened the book, and it said, to Natalie. He did not do one thing I asked him to do. It said, to Natalie, you will see your father again. Alan.
Amen.